How's it going, everybody? If you guys are new to this channel, my name is Chris. If you're subscribed to this channel, welcome back. I just want to hop in and talk about Logic Pro for iPad. So when Apple has announced that the Logic Pro for iPad is coming up very soon, it sounds like an exciting news. And for me, I was looking forward to it, and I do want to take a look at it and see how this really looks like. But when I took a look and I just look at the website regarding with the iPad version of Logic Pro, the user interface looks so modern, and I could see that the plugins looks more redesigned comparing to the Mac versions, which the designs of these plugins like the ES2, the pitch correct, and also the sculpture has not been updated, and it still looks the same, and it's been there for a while. But when I said to myself, when I was looking at this, I was like, if Apple brings Logic Pro on the iPad, I think Apple would also release it on the Mac with redesigned plugins. Once May 23rd came in, I just right away wanted to download it, and I just want to access it. In addition to the Mac version, I thought it was going to happen. But unfortunately, I think maybe Apple will bring that in the future with the redesigned user interface. Especially, I've seen like the plugins that comes from Logic Pro. It really does need a redesign. Maybe we might see it happen, but I have no idea. When will that happen? Especially, because when it took a while for a new version or anything like that, I was like, pretty much they just kept the same and all that stuff with 10.7.8. But when it comes with the redesign, with the plugins that came from the iPad, and if it comes to the Mac, the version number would have been 10.8 or version 11, but I'm not sure. Or maybe Apple's going to bring version 10.7.9 with some more improvements, or maybe redesign some of the plugins. I have been using Logic Pro since version 10.7, but when I heard about Logic Pro 10.7 since November of 2021, I was stoked about this version, and I noticed that it was a huge upgrade from 10.6. I was using Nuendo for a while before I started to hop into Logic Pro when Apple released 10.7. Logic Pro 10.7 came with various features, including the spatial audio with Dolby Atmos, which I wanted to use that feature to be able to bring an option to listeners to be able to listen whether they want to listen to stereo or Dolby Atmos, but I don't want to force or obligate any users or make them listen to Dolby Atmos. But they can choose if they want to choose. And I use Logic Pro for a reason, which I use it to create worship music. But I've done making 2 worship songs on Logic Pro, and both of them are spatial audio. I was satisfied with version 10.7, and it felt so efficient from the DAW that I used to have, which I was pretty lost, and it was pretty stressful, and also couldn't be able to make some ideas with songs. But now, since Logic Pro 10.7 came in, I started to just jump in right away, and I just want to get to that DAW, and it just gave me some music ideas. And that's where I created both of my worship songs, I Stand For and On the Nicest I Am. But by the way, both of them are still on Apple Music and Spotify and every music sources, but you can take a listen. So please go ahead and take a listen to these songs, because I worked really hard and it took me a lot of time to be able to create these worship songs. And it was a blessing to be able to create a worship song using Logic Pro. So let me go ahead and go back to the iPad, because this is the topic that I wanted to talk about. The iPad version looks great. It's pretty cool, and it kind of looks like a redesigned, modernized version. But I know if Apple might bring that type of modern version one day, but as long as it is a Mac created and not like thinking that it is a touchscreen. But to be honest, there has been a lot of features that has been stripped down and limited from the Mac version. Second of all, there's no perpetual license for the Logic Pro for iPad. You can only pay monthly or you can pay a year. The good news is that Logic Pro for iPad has a free trial. But the free trial for Logic Pro for iPad is 30 days. On the macOS version, it's 90 days. I believe that 30 days for me isn't that enough, but 90 days would have been perfectly for me to be able to take more time to look at this software on the iPad. I use the iPad 9th generation, 64 gigabytes of storage. For right now, I am using Logic Pro for iPad for 30 days. I did a little bit and just played around and used a little bit of mini art on it. For me, I feel comfortable using Logic Pro on a Mac by using both mouse and keyboard instead of a touchscreen. I do not know about your thoughts, if you prefer to just use Logic Pro on the iPad or are you just used to it with using Logic Pro on the Mac. But I know for me, I prefer to use Logic Pro on a Mac rather than on the iPad. Because on the iPad, I noticed that there's been plenty of hiccups for me and limited features that I would use. But I know I was like, where is spatial audio for Dolby Atmos on the iPad? But I noticed that it is not there. To be honest, I am a big fan of using Logic Pro's spatial audio with Dolby Atmos feature. And hopefully when I start making more songs, I would definitely mix my songs with Dolby Atmos. But not all of it, but some of the songs. When I was looking at these in the bottom, these like mini plugins, it kind of looks like Ableton. But maybe in the future Logic Pro versions, like maybe version 10.8 or version 11, maybe Apple would redesign this by including the bottom one, which is the quick controls tab, that would look like this rather than just looking like a single knob, single looking outdated interface that it is on the Mac version. But it's kind of cool that you can access to every plugins rather than just popping up with just like one function, which some of them of the knobs or any of the plugins that is there are pretty limited, and not needing to open up the full plugin window on the Mac version, because that would be so cool if they included this. This is the thing that I really like the most, is when this gets added onto the new version of Logic Pro. I would rather use this to be able to create song ideas, but at the same time, I think it's not worth us spending money on it to just use it as a music idea and not use it as a full time or using it as a whole. To be able to create song ideas, I think it's better to use it on the GarageBand for iOS rather than just getting Logic Pro and then just paying for it monthly or yearly on it. The best thing that Apple still has with Logic Pro on the Mac is that you can only pay once, which is $199 for Logic Pro. And it's not expensive. But I know I can see other DAWs that it costs a lot of money. I can see other DAWs that cost a lot of money. But I felt a lot more comfortable using Logic Pro on a Mac. If Apple decided to bring a one-time purchase on Logic Pro on the iPad, maybe it would cost maybe around $199 or maybe it could be $99. If the features from Logic Pro did not came onto the iPad, like the Dolby Atmos feature, I believe the perpetual or the one-time purchase on Logic Pro for iPad would have been around $99 instead of $199 on the Mac version. Those are just my thoughts regarding with how much it would be for a one-time purchase if Apple decides to bring it on the Logic Pro for iPad. I use my iPad regularly to access Planning Center and Music Stand to be able to look at the sheet music when it comes with worship. When it comes with me being up on stage, I just pull out Music Stand and I want to make sure that on what songs that we're playing, You know, I can just open up and then just use that. If I get the Pro version of the iPad, such as the iPad Pro, then I might end up ditching the MacBook Pro altogether. I prefer to just get the base iPad. For me, I don't want to go fancy on the iPad because I want to use my Mac to be able to access with creative stuff like music production on Logic Pro. But to be honest, Logic Pro is actually for anyone that wants to give it a try, especially for beginners, and if they feel comfortable of using it on the touchscreen, or if they feel comfortable of just like wanted to access the features and take it on the go and don't want to take their computers, you know, maybe that's good for you. You know, and I'm proud of what you do. If you made your first song on Logic Pro for iPad, right here, congratulations. Whenever you feel comfortable of using this on the iPad and not on the MacBook, that's good for you. You know, I can't tell you what apps you should use or anything like that. But for me, I feel comfortable of using Logic Pro on the Mac because I'm already gotten used to it with all these features, and especially the features that couldn't be able to make it on the iPad version. But you know, I'm just trying the iPad version of Logic Pro just for 30 days, and that's all I'm just going to use. But you know, I would rather just stick up with the Mac version. So what are your thoughts about the iPad version of Logic Pro? But for those of you who are using Logic Pro for iPad, tell me what you think. Do you really appreciate it? Do you enjoy it? Do you like the UI? And these UI plugins for me, hopefully one day they would come on the Mac version. But as long as Apple doesn't strip everything down with the features, and they would keep the one-time purchase, and they would keep the features that I use on the Mac version of Logic Pro, hopefully Apple will bring more stability on it. Or even on the future updates with Logic Pro for iPad, they could bring some of the Mac OS version of Logic features to be brought on the iPad. So I think these are just my thoughts about Logic Pro for iPad. Alright, so if you really enjoyed it, that's awesome. I hope you are able to watch it through the end. And hopefully I'll see you all later.